Welcome in, everybody, to the episode 3 of the Fantasy Football Life Advice podcast. I'm your host, Tim Barth. My co-host, Riley Driscoll, is out today. He's out doing some sort of hiking shit. I don't know. Supposedly 10 days, 100 plus miles. Hopefully he comes back. I don't know. We'll see. Today we're going to get into the rankings for wide receivers, 11 through 20. Talk a little bit about maybe some Aaron Rodgers news prior to whether this mini camp absence really means anything. Is it going to affect the team? Me personally, I don't think so. I think if he's absent during training camp, then I think we have some more questions to ask. So when July rolls around and training camp starts, I think we'll keep an eye on it then. But until then, I don't see it as being an issue. He's a veteran. He doesn't need a mini camp to prepare him for the season. So we'll see. But anyways, let's get into the wide receiver rankings for 11 through 20. We're going to start out at number 20 with DK Metcalf. And DK, big-bodied receiver. Lot of TD upside. He's been top 4 in end zone targets for every year of his career, actually. But with new coordinator Ryan Grubb coming in from the University of Washington, he seems to hyper target the slot position quite a bit, which could mean a breakout year for second-year receiver JSN. But Metcalf had 66 receptions for 119 targets in 16 games last year with 8 TDs. A lot of it's going to depend on the new OC. We'll see if he brings that same type of play calling for the focusing on the slot receiver to the NFL that he had in college. Rome Odunze played a little bit in the slot last year and was pretty successful. Jalen McMillan the year before, primarily out of the slot, had a really solid year, over 1,000 yards receiving out of the slot. But right now, I think DK is just a TD base wide receiver 2. He's finished in that area, higher tight end 2, or not tight end, higher wide receiver 2 for the past couple years. So I don't see that changing. I think he could drop this year depending on what we see from JSN. And they haven't lost Tyler Lockett yet either. And we're also looking at Geno Smith, 2 years out of the Dave Canales offense, and this is their third offensive coordinator in the last 3 years. So I think we could see some struggling out of that offense a little bit in Seattle. But we'll move on. ADP. So DK Metcalf is currently going wide receiver 23. I have him ranked at 20. So I do have him a little ahead of ADP. His overall ADP, he's going around 45. So you're looking at just early 4th round. So pretty good value for a receiver in that range. We'll move on to Cooper Kupp as our wide receiver 19. Cooper Kupp, last couple of years dealing with injuries. He's averaged about 6 games missed over the last 2 years, which is a concern. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Kupp ranked as a low-end wide receiver 2. He'll be 31 this season as well, which is where receivers typically start falling off. If he could stay healthy, though, he's still going to be a top weapon in a high-powered Sean McVay offense. When healthy, Kupp is averaging 8 targets a game, and he was the leader in the red zone targets last year, even with Puka going off. So I don't see anything changing in that. Changing in that offense from last year. For the most part, I still think Puka is going to be the top target, but I think Kupp can still play a pretty vital role in that offense. Obviously, a lot of it's going to depend on his health, on where he lands, but he should easily be a wide receiver 2 range if he stays healthy all year. That's the big question, though. Can he stay healthy all year? Beyond that, solid wide receiver 2 at number 21. His ADP, he's currently going off the board as a 21st wide receiver, and 42nd overall off the board. So right in that DK range. They're going off the board pretty much back to back. My wide receiver 17 for this year, DJ Moore. This is a tough one. It's difficult to try to pick who that wide receiver 1's going to be for the Bears this year. Allen coming in with the draft of Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams is new quarterback. The offense is pretty much revamped. You got DeAndre Swift in the backfield. We don't know what is going to play out in Chicago this year. But DJ Moore is the one coming back with experience in that offensive scheme. So I'll probably have all these guys ranked pretty close to each other by time draft time rolls around. And we'll see how camp plays out and who's being hyped up the most and who seems to be creating the most chemistry with Caleb Williams. But as of right now, I'm leaning DJ Moore, mainly based on what he did last year and what experience he has in that scheme. He's currently going off the board at wide receiver 17 with an ADP of 32. So right about where I have him is where he's going. Probably about mid-third round. I probably wouldn't take him mid-third round. But there's probably some other targets there I'd rather take, but just due to the unknowns, he's going about right about the wide receiver that I would have him ranked at. Moving on to my wide receiver 16. This was a tough one, and I'll explain why, but Nico Collins is my wide receiver 16. Here's my dilemma with this pick. Obviously, Nico had a huge year last year, and I'd probably have him ranked as a wide receiver 1 if it weren't for the fact that they brought in Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon this year. Adds a lot of mouths to feed for that offense and the return of Tank Dell. I still feel he has the most upside on the team due to his chemistry that he's built with CJ Stroud, and he's coming off a year where he ranked pretty high in a pretty important metric when it comes to receivers, and that's the yards per route run. He ranks second in that category, only to Tyreek Hill. And if you don't know how important that is, just listen to the names at the top of that list. You had Hill, Collins, Aiyuk, Jefferson, Waddle, Lamb, St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, and Rashee Rice. So yeah, there's a couple that are outliers, but at the same time, that's a pretty high valued list when it comes to fantasy football. So being up there is pretty good, and it also, there's a lot of evidence that it proves for future success in fantasy as well. So that's why I have him ranked as the top wide receiver on the Texans this year. But there's a lot of mouths to feed on that offense, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out when we get to the season. Moving on to my wide receiver 15. The clear number 1 on his team. Wide receiver from Indianapolis Colts, Michael Pittman. He's got wide receiver 1 upside. It just depends on the development of Anthony Richardson this year and how he throws the ball. The reason I have him ranked so low is based on the fact that he has a top running back in Jonathan Taylor on the team and a rushing quarterback in Anthony Richardson on the team. And I don't even have him ranked below ADP. Currently, he's going as a wide receiver 18, and ADP is 34. So he's a pretty good value for being the lead target on a team. Competition on that team is Josh Downs and Adonai Mitchell. Pittman had a 30% target share in 2023, which is a huge target share. There's only few over that 30% mark, him being one. Obviously, Gardner Minshew throwing on the ball last year. Anthony Richardson will be back this year. He only played 4 last year, so we didn't really get a good sample size of how it could play out. But I don't see much changing. His target share may drop a little into the 20s, but I still see him as a mid 20% target share this year. So I'll take Pittman in his current ADP of wide receiver 18, that mid third round or late third round wide receiver. He's currently going after DJ Moore. I'll take him over DJ Moore all day. There's too many mouths to feed in that offense. Moving on, wide receiver 14, Deebo Samuel. So here's the deal with Deebo. He could very well move up in these rankings depending on what happens with Brandon and Aiyuk. If Aiyuk leaves in a trade, which is very likely, Deebo becomes the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in that offense. But Deebo plays a different role in that offense. So will this Aiyuk move affect his value very much? Maybe. But you could see a hike in Kittle. You could see a hike in Pearsall. Deebo plays a special role in that offense. So I don't know if there's going to be a lot of movement, even if Aiyuk leaves, due to the fact that the role they put Deebo in this offense. So his role really didn't dramatically change last year, and he dropped quite a bit. He dropped almost 10 points a game in fantasy production, which is huge. But at the same time, his touches and targets really didn't change a whole lot. He was still seeing the ball come his way about 11 times a game last year. It may have dropped. He may have been around 12 times the year before when he had his breakout season, but he really didn't see a whole lot of change in his role in that offense last year. It was just his efficiency, which was expected. He had such a ridiculous efficiency rate the year before he broke out. It's tough not to see that drop last year. So we'll see if Aiyuk leaves. Maybe his efficiency will pick back up. Maybe he'll get a few more touches, and we'll see his efficiency pick back up a little bit. But that wide receiver 14 is a little. I have him a little ahead of ADP right now. He's going at wide receiver 16. Overall ADP is 31. So about mid third round. Not sure I would take Deebo. I just, it's hard to trust a wide receiver who requires the efficiency he requires to be a successful fantasy asset. If he hits, though, he could be. I mean, obviously we saw his upside the year before, that top 5 wide receiver if he hits. Moving on to the wide receiver 13, looking at Davante Adams. So I'm lower on Adams than a lot of people this year. And a lot of it has to do with who's throwing on the football. And does anybody really know that right now? Supposedly a battle between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell in camp this year. I would think with them bringing in Minshew, they're going to give the ball to Minshew, give him a chance. Talent with Davante Adams obviously plays a factor. I still haven't. That's why I still have him in my top 15. Since 2017, Adams has only finished outside wide receiver 1 range one time, and that was in 2019, where he only played 12 games and finished as a wide receiver 24. So he still finished as a wide receiver 2, even only playing 12 games. Adams has been about as consistent as it gets when it comes to fantasy football since he took over the Green Bay's wide receiver 1. But age is creeping up on him. He's in that age 30 range. And it's a messy QB situation there in Vegas. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out and how it affects Adams. He obviously doesn't have a whole lot of competition. They did bring in Brock Bowers from Georgia, new tight end. But beyond that, he doesn't have a whole lot of competition, which could creep him up back into that wide receiver 1 range, but I'm just not willing to take that chance. The quarterback play worries me, so that's why I won't take him there. Current ADP is about wide receiver 9, so he's just inside that top 12 with an ADP of about 17, which is way too high for me. I'm not willing to pay that price, that mid second round price for Adams this year. Next wide receiver, my wide receiver 13. Looking at Mike Evans from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mr. Consistency. I was over 1,000 yards every year. Big red zone target. My concern with Evans lays within going back to the Seattle talk and DK Metcalf talk. Dave Canales left as the offensive coordinator. Canales has proven time and time again that he can turn average QBs into above average QBs. Examples: Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. Smith took a step back when Canales left in Seattle. The question will be, can Baker keep up what he did last year after Canales left for Carolina? Obviously, Baker and Evans built that chemistry last year. I don't see that changing. I still see Evans being his number one target. However, I do feel we're going to look at Tampa maybe taking a step back when it comes to what they did last year, mainly because of that offensive coordinator change. Again, this is their third offensive coordinator in the last 3 years. So keep an eye on Evans. I have him as my wide receiver 13 because he has been consistent. Big red zone target. Probably one of the leading targets on the team this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as the season rolls around and as camp rolls around, see how things are going. Wide receiver 12. So getting into that wide receiver 1 range. Here's where the big conversation starts. Wide receiver 12 for me, Brandon Aiyuk. Here's the conundrum with Aiyuk. Where does he land? His ranking will go up and down for me based on his landing spot. So let's talk a little bit about the landing spot, which I said we would do during this video if it hadn't been announced yet. I have a few ideas. I think my favorite landing spot for him would be the Chargers. They lack a top receiver on that offense, and they have a solid quarterback that can get him the ball. I feel like Aiyuk in that offense would probably push him up into the top 10 of my rankings. So it'll be interesting to see if the Chargers make a move on him, knowing they don't have a leading wide receiver right now. It just depends if they could pay Aiyuk what he wants. What he wants, who knows? If he's asking for the Justin Jefferson range, I think he's going to be sitting without a team for a while. The next offense that I could see him being in, or a team making a move for him, is the New England Patriots. Patriots have a couple good rookies they brought in, but they lack a clear-cut number one receiver, just like the Chargers do. So I could see them making a move on him. I don't see his ranking changing. Maybe it may even drop a little bit due to quarterback situation. We don't know. Is it going to be Jacoby Brissett? Is it going to be Drake May? And how does Drake May perform at the NFL level? We've seen these ACC quarterbacks come in here before, be super hyped. The Mitchell Trubiskys, Daniel Jones, and they don't perform. And teams waste these high-value picks on them, and then they just can't perform against these high-level teams in the NFL. So another team, and this is going to make people cringe, Arizona Cardinals. If you're a Marvin Harrison truther, if you think he's going to be that dude, it's a possibility. I don't see it happening, and the main reason is because it's within division. I don't see the 49ers sending Aiyuk to a division rival when they can find somebody outside the division who would probably take him. It would probably take a offer that the 49ers just couldn't refuse to make that move happen. And I don't see them making that offer with just drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first round of the draft. Two other teams I could see making a move. There's been a lot of kind of talk about the Steelers making a move, which would make a pretty good tandem between him and George Pickens on the outside. And then the Commanders, due to his connection with Jaden Daniels. Obviously, most people have seen the video of him telling Jaden Daniels over FaceTime that the 49ers don't want him anymore. So he obviously has a connection with them. So it could be a possibility. But the 49ers have a halfway decent setup at wide receiver. Obviously, Aiyuk would make them better. It's just a matter if they want to go out and get him and pay the price. Moving on to our last wide receiver number 11. And let me go back. ADP for Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver 12. Overall ADP is 20. Obviously, it's all going to depend on his landing spot. For Mike Evans, wide receiver 15, ADP is 30. I would take him there all day. I just feel like he's got too much upside, and he just continues to show every year what he can do, no matter who's throwing him the ball. But back to wide receiver 11, probably my favorite, and it was tough to keep him outside. Quarterback play is probably what kept him outside the top 10 for me. It's Chris Olave. And here's what excites me going about end of this year about Chris Olave. True breakout potential with new coordinator and Clint Kubiak. He's coming over from the 49ers as our passing game coordinator. They discussed going into a run-first offense, but I believe this will open up things for Olave quite a bit with the play action. It's a matter if Carr can deliver the ball to Olave. I really believe Olave is the candidate for over 150 targets this year. Doesn't have a whole lot of competition in that offense for targets. So I personally think Olave could be, he's got top 5 upside if things play out this year and Carr can deliver him the ball. That's the biggest question right now, is Derek Carr. Olave has everything in the world set up for him. So I could easily see over 150 targets, over 1,000 yards. You could be looking at top 5 potential if it plays out. And he's going off right at where I have him as wide receiver 11. His ADP is 19. So he's going off the board after Davante Adams. I would take him over Davante Adams right now. And I will give you an honorable mention that I debated on for probably 15, 20 minutes just looking and had a hard time keeping him outside my top 20, and that's Zay Flowers. He's currently wide receiver 25. Overall ADP is 51, so he's still a value to me. Here's the hardest thing for me with Flowers and what kept him outside my top 20. Lamar Jackson has never supported a top 20 receiver since he's been in the league. He's barely supported a top 24 wide receiver. That's happened once, and that was Hollywood Brown. And he finished wide receiver 23. I'm not including Mark Andrews in there. This is just wide receivers. The Ravens also had the highest split last year of run pass. They were right about the 50-50 mark. So they were highest on the run percentage, which was the exact opposite of what we heard all preseason last year under new offensive coordinator Todd Monken. So you put those two things together, and the fact that they brought in Derrick Henry, which is one of the biggest bruising backs in the league, and you think they're not going to give him the ball over 200 times, 250 times, you're probably mistaken. And then you add Lamar Jackson's scrambling ability. I just don't see him moving into the top 20. It's hard to say that because I'm a believer in Flowers. I think he's a very talented receiver. I just don't feel like he's going to show his true potential in this offense. I hope I'm wrong, but it's going to be interesting to see how this second year into Todd Monken plays out. Hopefully we get that a little bit higher passing run split, but I don't see it happening with the moves they made. But that's gonna end this episode. Make sure you hit that subscribe button in the bottom corner of the screen. Give us a like. Also, head over to our Facebook, our Instagram, our X, and follow us. So we're constantly publishing content on there, asking questions, and don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions. We'll answer them right here on the video if you want to hear our views on your questions. But I'm gonna get off here, and we'll see you in the next week with some more content. You guys have a good day.